several students here today from 4 different colleges. I've given you a little bit of a biography of all of them. There is one last-minute change. We have Javon as one of our students on the panel instead of Tim. Okay. We're going to get started. The way that we're going to do this is I have several prepared questions. We're going to have maybe 3 of the students respond to each question, and then we'll move on to the next question. At the end, we'll open it up to the audience for questions as well. And perhaps the students will have some questions for us as well. Okay, so first I'd like to start by having the students introduce themselves. So let's start with the Bunker Hill folks. If you wouldn't mind introducing yourselves, please.
Hello everyone, my name is William Fabian, and I've been East Wentworth for 5 semesters now.
Hi, my name is Rosa Lopez, and I've been mentoring for 4 semesters.
Hi, my name is Shakira. I've been a mentor for 3 semesters.
Okay, the students who are present?
My name is Javon.
And tell us what college you're
Oh, I'm sorry, Holyoke Community College.
My name is Carly, and I'm also from Holyoke Community College.
My name is Benjamin, and I am from Holyoke Community College.
Okay. And we have two other students. We have Lobelis. Lobelis, please introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Lobelis Anisette. I am a student at Kingsborough Community College. I'm on my 2nd semester, liberal art, and soon to be preclinical nursing.
Okay, and we have Alyssa. Please introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Alyssa Garfield. I'm from Wagner College, and I am the graduate assistant for integrated learning and academic assessment. I also went to Wagner for 4 years and went through 3 learning communities.
Okay. All right. So our first question for the panel. What do you think of learning communities? Are learning communities a good thing? Why or why not? Okay, yeah, Lobelis, please.
I believe that learning communities are very good, and they are essential for the academic success of students, especially those students that are freshmen coming to college for the first time, because not only you learn how to be a better student, but you get the steps necessary to need to be successful in college. So I believe without learning communities, a lot of students will be missing on the opportunity of getting the right skills that are necessary for any student to be successful in college.
Yes.
I think learning communities are very important. It's a great idea to connect different subjects under a common theme because it allows you to analyze different subjects in a non-traditional way, and it promotes more forward thinking rather than just the traditional run-of-the-mill, this is this subject, this is this subject. You can combine them together and think of a different way of bringing more positive productivity to the future.
I also think that as first-year students, we come into college very nervous and scared. That I don't know what to expect. And to have somebody else that can do what we didn't do. For example, me as a first-year student, I was really scared. I didn't know what I wanted to do in college. I didn't know how to get around. I didn't know what classes to take. But I had a mentor who helped me get through all those things and helped me get my stuff together. For example, there was one time where I needed help with my food stamps or something, and they helped me look back to the office and get what I needed.
Would anybody here like to respond? Or?
Yeah, I think learning communities are amazing because they definitely help connect the dots between 2 subjects. I think it also encourages a more challenging curriculum for students. It's learning how to apply one subject into another, I think, is the best part.
Yeah.
Can you expand upon that, how learning communities make the curriculum more challenging and probe much more deeper questions in your own experience?
Repeat the question.
The question is asking her to expand on how the learning communities make the curriculum more challenging.
Well, you don't only get to observe one curriculum, you don't get to study one subject. You have to learn how one subject applies to the other, and you get to understand how it's more applicable, I would say, in real life. But also, I guess is another aspect of it. The combination of the two is just so much more impactful.
Okay, what were some of the positive experiences that you had within your learning communities?
One of the positive experiences I would say that is to see how your students grow, because when I attended my first learning community seminar, they were all freshmen and they were all new to college, and when I met them like 2 or 3 semesters later, I saw that they were in honor seminar, they were in ATM honor society, they're active, and they're very involved in the community, the professional community, they're very motivated, and they have an open mind that they want to do something, they want to pursue, read, and move on. So that was one of the positive experiences, to know that you actually made a difference in somebody's life by motivating them. So that's
Yes.
I personally think that my own positive experience was the fact that when you come to a learning community, you have a support group, not only support from the students that you go to class with, but also from the professors and the advisors and even the faculty members that are part of these learning communities. And it becomes really, really important when you go into college and you know you have a group of people or even a single academic advisor that you can trust to. If you have an issue, you can go and talk to them, and you know that they're going to tell you exactly what you need to do to resolve your issue, and as a consequence, do better in school.
Yes.
Something that well, there's many things that I find to be positive about learning communities, but something I think we should say first is that at Holyoke Community College, our learning communities are fully integrated. So we have 2 teachers in 1 classroom teaching 2 subjects at once. And on that level, it's very rigorous. There's a lot of reading, a lot of discussion. Every week we have seminars. And to have the power in the hands of the students to come up with the ideas and to really stay on focus with the text and to be critical and analytical on that level, and to be engaging with each other like that is an experience that I never thought I would get at community college. And it just really opened up the doors in terms of learning for me. And I don't see where, I just couldn't imagine my path without having learning communities be part of my experience.
I think we've also had the privilege of having really passionate teachers. That's been very important. To have 2 very passionate teachers try and convey a message to the students has just been amazing.
Great. So we've talked about some of the positive things. Now, on the flip side, if there was one thing that you could change about the learning communities that you participated in, what would it be? What would you change if you could? Yeah, Lois.
Do you know how we have a theme in the learning communities, and once you go to the learning community, that theme is already chosen for you? So I feel that if the students that are coming into these learning communities were given the choice to at least go into a topic that they would like to research or explore, it would make that learning community more interactive, give the opportunity to students to at least have a voice on what topics should be studied or researched.
Yeah.
One thing I think that could really be done to strengthen just learning community programs in general is really the idea of getting the word out, getting like prospective students and potential students in the learning community informed and involved in the process as much as possible, because it's heartbreaking when there's like a learning community that sounds really interesting that you're really excited about, and then it ends up like not running because there weren't enough students. And then conversely, it can be a real drag when you get students that are signing up and starting a learning community with like a really like interesting hook or title, and then once they realize sort of the course load, you get them falling out, and it can keep the community from coming to that early cohesion that really leads to wonderful discussions.
I was going to say exactly that. Awareness is the first couple semesters at Holyoke Community College, I was oblivious to learning communities. And most students that I speak to have no idea what a learning community is. And my advisors didn't suggest learning communities, and so definitely the word. It's nice to have a small class size because it allows us to connect a little better, but I really wish there were more students.
Yeah, would anybody else like to reply?
I would say that in Wagner we have so much support for the students, we do this with the friends. But I don't know, it's hard for me to say what I would think about that class because one thing that we do is that in my class, in the senior that I mentor, the professor in the first day of class, she will give a list to students and then we get to collaborate and participate one on one at a first. And this is taking
And also here, when students come to Wagner, when they have their new student orientation, our success coaches or advisors, the first thing they advise students is to take a seminar. That's one of the main elements students have.
And the whole freshman after graduation, we do advertise for the community. We do prevent students to participate. So I just have to go
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about some of the academics in the learning communities. How did the classes that you took connect with one another within the learning community? And was there a moment when you were taking these classes where you said to yourself, "Hey, that connect? I just learned something that connects with something that I learned in the other class." Or yes.
In particular, the classes that I've taken start with an epistemological approach to the materials. So everything, we get a seminar, we get a packet of readings that go along with what we're learning outside of our text like our literature. And it's, you start with how do you know what it is that you know about these topics, and how is it that we can look at these things in a different way than possibly you've ever seen the world before. And starting off from that point of reshaping the way that you're learning and viewing things really makes the materials sink in even more. And it gives me meaning to learning in general. And when you start mixing, I guess there's no real moment where it's like, aha, these two things have come together. It seems as though these two subjects have always been together, even if you don't necessarily think that they are meant to be together. So it seems as though it's just a perfect cohesion all throughout.
Okay, yeah, Labellas, please.
I believe the way these learning communities connect, the classes connect with each other, it's because of And for example, when I took my first learning community on my first semester, I was taking psychology, English 12, and SC 10. So our theme was happiness. So all the readings that we did on English 12 were about happiness. And then on psychology, we did a lot of readings also regarding happiness. But at the end of the semester, we had to do our final project for English. And we had to use what we learned in psychology to understand a character of a short story that we read in the English class. So you basically learn theory, but you learn how to apply that theory to a real situation. So all the concepts that we learn in psychology, we apply to understand a character that was having psychological issues. So I believe that is the way they connect, because you learn how to look at a certain topic from different perspectives, psychologically or biologically. It really helps, because you learn and then you apply what you learn. And it's really good to improve your critical thinking and to become a better student in the long run.
Yes, please.
I'll just bring up one specific example because I think it really speaks to like how creative and how in-depth you can get with taking two different subjects and plugging them together into like a common direction of study. There was a learning community I took last semester called The Commons, the One and the Many, that was about the changing availability and relationship with shared space in a modern world, how that's sort of going away and not the same way that it used to be back in more like communal societies. And it let us go so many different places, from like a brief overview to like the history of economic systems in humans, to ecofeminism, to political science, and this was it was a philosophy and a political science glued together. But they were able to go so deep and so specific on certain subjects that it really lit a fire under all of us that were in the class to go and do so much like work and outside research to sort of like bring these like more interesting components together. And you get this like synergistic effect between all the students where everyone can sort of build on each other's work and go much further than you'd be able to in a traditional classroom.
Yes, Alyssa.
So at Wagner College, we had the experience component, and I think that's what really brought my two classes together, because I had history and economics, and yes, we looked at history through an economic standpoint and the history of economics in those two classes, but when we came to the reflective learning course and we went out in Port Richmond, we went to Port Richmond High School, we spoke to the students that were there and looked at the history of the Port Richmond community and the economic standpoint there, because it's a very poor neighborhood. It really brought the two elements together and did projects with the students at the school and helped them brighten their future and show them that there's a future that they can connect with Wagner College.
Okay. So what was the balance between the learning community courses like? I mean, did you feel like the subjects were kind of equal partners, or was one course like more important and the other one was sort of supporting that course, or were they totally unrelated, or what? How did the courses interact with each other? Yes.
So one of my courses, my IS, that was a team taught course, and it was actually really difficult to get through because both teachers were teaching the same subject at the same time with two different standpoints. So I had business standpoint and sociology standpoint for the subject of corporate scandals, and one teacher was just so much stronger than the other, and another teacher kind of was very boring. So that actually made it very hard to get through the class, because your one side of the class was just so much more interesting than the other, and the tests were all one test and one paper, so it was just it was very difficult to get through that when one teacher is just so much more common.
again, as Carly mentioned, all of HCC's learning communities are co-taught, so it's a double length class, and there's 2 teachers in there. And I think the way that HCC is able to get that to work so well is that very rarely, if ever, does one teacher exclusively teach their discipline and then sort of hand it off to the other teacher. That might happen at the very beginning if you're like learning new vocabulary or some new concepts that are going to be used throughout the semester. But almost invariably, both teachers will sort of like hand off rapid fire as you move through different concepts or discussions, and really sort of like keep tying it back to their own respective sources, which just gives you a much more holistic understanding of the subject matter in general.
Last year,